go away. And yet, Tavis Smiley, you were critical of the president. You said on Twitter his comments were as weak as pre-sweetened Kool-Aid. He took too long to show up and express outrage.
I appreciate and applaud the fact that the president did finally show up. But this town has been spinning a story that's not altogether true. He did not walk to the podium for an impromptu address to the nation. He was pushed to that podium. A week of protest outside the White House, pressure building on him inside the White House, pushed him to that podium. So I'm glad he finally arrived. But when he left the podium, he still had not answered the most important question, that Kingian question, where do we go from here? That question this morning remains unanswered, at least from the perspective of the president. And the bottom line is, this is not Libya, this is America. On this issue, you cannot lead from behind. What's lacking in this moment is moral leadership. The country is begging for it, they're craving it. And I disagree with the president respectfully that politicians, elected officials, can't occupy this space on race. Lincoln did, Truman did, Johnson did, President Obama did. He's the right person in the right place at the right time, but he has to step into his moment. I don't want him to be like Bill Clinton when he's out of office, regretting that he didn't move on Rwanda. I don't want the president to look back, David, and realize that he didn't do as much as he could have in this critical moment.
To Tavis's point, Professor, there has been criticism. It's been building over the course of the week. Janet Langard-Cohen wrote in the Washington Post, journalist and author, on Tuesday that he had imposed himself in this silence about race, and she wrote this: "During this period of self-imposed silence, we have watched our criminal laws become radicalized, our race criminalized. Blacks continue to be faced with punishing unfairness and inequalities, soaring rates of unemployment, discriminatory drug laws, disproportionate prison sentences, unequal access to health care and healthy food, unfair stop and frisk policies, and accidental shootings of unarmed black men by the police. These and more are treated with indifference or contempt. We're told to stop complaining, to get over it. No one cares." Tavis's argument that this has not been part of this president's agenda.
I disagree with Tavis in a profound way. President Obama has been talking about race and doing things about race for a long time. And the reality is that he walked to the podium. He wasn't pushed to the podium. He walked to the podium. He's been trying to have this conversation, and this was the event, the criminal justice system, that pushed him over the level. And what he said about Trayvon was a continuation of what he said when he was shot in February 2012. I think that he said, and if you read his statement, his whole statement, he said, let's have a conversation on race. Let's convene that. Let's talk about, we made some progress as a society, but we still have a long way to go. And I think that what he said and what he did and what he represents to us is a sense. People keep making him as if he's the black president. He's the president who happens to be black. And he can do whatever he can do for all of us, but not simply focus on one community or one issue.
David, what the president did is open the door to begin a conversation. One speech can't outline every single action step that needs to be taken. And I think the president agonized. It's not difficult to carry the burdens of history in a nation with so much history. But what he did, I think, is start the process and sort of sanction, if you will, the need for there to be a discussion and action steps. And I expect that there will be more. Because one thing is certain, the emotional court and the response, the vigils on yesterday, the Civil Rights Continuation March on August 24th, the Urban League Conference that will take place this week in Philadelphia. This conversation at the grassroots level, at the community level, within boardrooms and suites also has just begun. And I think what I hope it leads to, and what I hope we will see, is not only a discussion that started and ends quickly, but a discussion that will lead to serious action steps by the nation.
But that's the key piece, the discussion that starts and ends quickly. I hearken back to the gun debate, and the president bootstrapped the gun argument with his initial comments the day of the jury verdict in a way that it was disconnected. And if you look at the momentum behind that discussion, coming off of Sandy Hook and the raw emotion from the American people saying, we want something done here, let's move on this. What happened? The discussion dissipated. And then this was something that the president came in again and heralded, but then let the steam fall out of it. So my concern on this is, it's great to step to the podium. I tend to agree with Tavis. It's great to step to the podium to be in that moment. But then it's not so much leading, but continuing to inspire the conversation. so that it doesn't die on the vine, that it does get life of its own, because this is a conversation, quite honestly, folks, we need to have first in the black community before you start putting it so much on the president.
But look, it is the president must lead, but the president needs cohorts. He needs assistance.
Well, that's where we come in.
Wait a minute.
He has that.
Let me make my point, because my point is that in order to move a piece of legislation, in order to move action steps, the president can in fact lead. And the president is also in an environment of continuing obstruction that you know well, that you report on.
Mark, respectfully, Mark, nobody's arguing that he has been up against a headwind. The obstructionism is real. But with all due respect to my friend Charles Ogletree, the professor's wrong about this. I would ask you, lay on the table right now the evidence of how the president has been trying, Tree, to have a conversation about race. I'm talking to Professor Ogletree. Let me finish. I don't think that we have a litany here of things, of moments where he's tried to have the conversation. To the contrary, respectfully, he's tried to avoid the conversation, number one. Number two, when he says a politician can't have an impact on this, so yes, he gives a wonderful speech, but he basically kicks it back to the community leaders, to business leaders, to celebrities and athletes, and that's real, but the president can't absolve himself from it, number two. And finally, number three, I don't know how the president argues that he doesn't believe that he can have a role in leading us in a moral conversation. This is not a political issue. This is a moral issue. I don't know how he argues he can't lead us in a conversation on this, but he can on gay marriage. He can on a litany of other. He can on Israel and Palestine, but not race.